Hello and welcome to the 7th episode of Tea with P. Joining me today is the one and only Reece Stromberg. Reece, it's wonderful to have you on the show.
It is a pleasure to be here.
Perfect. All right, let's jump right in. Today we didn't have a questionnaire because I did not send out an email. Rather, I just wanted to have a simple chat with someone who I believed would give me that ability.
Yes,
that chance.
I would enjoy that very much.
All right, so we are today in Jamie's room rather than the small tutoring room downstairs. Did you ever have Jamie as a humanities teacher?
I did have Jamie. I had him last semester for AP Literature. It was a fine class, and he's a good teacher, but above all else, he's also just a good person.
Yes.
Very humorous. I really enjoyed the stories that he could tell us, and just the way he conducted that class.
Yes, I currently have him for humanities, and it's a wonderful journey so far. So you took advanced AP Literature, correct?
Yeah.
So would you consider yourself to be someone who enjoys reading and writing and just the English language in general?
Now, I would say I enjoy reading. Usually it depends on the kind of book that I'm reading. I'm not going to be a fan of, many things. For an example, just, a Western narrative, something like that. I wouldn't really care. I wouldn't really care for it. And writing too, it depends on what I'm writing about. For a good example, my college essays, those were excruciating. They took so long to write, like a day to write 250 words.
Oh my.
It was absurd. But for my senior speech or, something in debate or speech where I'm writing about politics or history, it comes much easier. And I think that would be true for, the vast majority of people. If you enjoy what you're writing or speaking or reading about, of course it'll come easier to you.
Exactly. You mentioned your senior speech, and in your senior speech, you mentioned your grandfather.
Yes.
And I've been meaning to talk to you about your grandfather because we've talked a few times before, and you've mentioned your grandfather in the highest regard. First off, if you believe he'd be comfortable with this information,
Of
what's
course.
his name?
His name is Marty. Marty Hirsch.
Marty Hirsch. And also, just like, what has his life journey been?
It's definitely been an interesting one. He grew up in a strictly Jewish household, Orthodox Jewish parents, and it was just he was actually a naturally born rebel. So we didn't really have much in common as far as childhood attitudes are concerned. He never really listened to his parents. He never really cared for the strict, religious. What would be the word? The strict religious code that his house would abide by. He from an early age would always just want to do the things that he wanted to do. Not the things that his parents mandated he do. A good example is a story he told me recently. He and his two other brothers were required to learn an instrument, and he just. I can't really recapture, the mannerisms he uses to tell a story, but basically, he would say that his brothers would play the piano beautifully, and their tutor would come in and give them high marks, and regardless of how many lessons he had, he would always just, he would be terrible at it. And that would be true to the wide variety of musical instruments that his parents forced him to try and play, but he just didn't care for it. He wanted to sing. He was in the choir in high school and college, and for some reason his parents always looked down on that. They wanted him to play an instrument to engage in the kind of intellectual rigor in school. But he always wanted to do sports. So it is very interesting how I chose that man who certainly as a child didn't have many similarities with me as someone who I look up to so deeply, but he is just, I suppose what's so fascinating about him is just his commitment to, what he believes and, balancing that with a tolerance for new perspectives and ideas. He was never really a fan of intellectual activity.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he went to college, he got involved in history. He didn't care for his German class or his philosophy class, but when he entered that history class, he told me that his professor really made the difference. He, rather than, and I've said this before, his professor, rather than making history seem like a memorization of names and dates and places and just, making it a study of
dead people.
Making it boring in that way, he illustrated its importance, made it about the stories of individuals and how, world-changing events altered people's lives as they do today.
Mm-hmm.
And that made sense to him. And he, took what he learned in that class and traveled the world, did, research for museums, and then went into business, and then eventually, retold many of those stories to me. And I was hooked ever since.
He sounds like a very admirable person. Admirable, not admiral. Yes, sounds like someone who you do well to idolize. What about just your childhood? You said it differed greatly from your...
Yeah, I would say it's interesting with my parents. I would generally contend that they are actually quite lenient when it comes to me. And that I, honestly, on my own, I supplemented, a need to be serious and to take on responsibility, to be an adult at such an early age. I wanted to do that, and that was really, and that had, my parents had no influence in that matter. I never really cared for, sports as my grandfather did. I got involved in reading about history and debating about politics from an early age, and I really, really enjoyed to do so. I think a lot of that was altered too by my trip to London in 2012. And that's actually interesting. One of the things I did not mention in my senior speech is that I really wanted to talk in a British accent all the time. You might have heard something about that.
I've heard, yes, I'm friends with some people who went to your school, and they said that you spoke in a somewhat British accent.
Geez. I think the better one is a transatlantic accent because it was never. I think that's just my excuse for it never being good.
Yes.
But regardless, so I wanted to do that, and I was convinced that if my school, didn't have such a strict dress code, that I would be wearing a top hat and, a pocket watch to school every day. I kid you not. That was what I wanted to do. Because when I went to London in 2012, I saw a place where people were just, so, in the words of one of my friends, so prim and proper.
Yes.
And I wanted to be that. I wanted to really live out my life in that way. And I've really thought over the years why I wanted to do that. And I'm sure part of it, admittedly, for the sake of honesty, is probably some degree of arrogance.
Oh, yes, of
when
course.
When you wear, fancy clothes or you talk in, an elevated manner, it gives you an excuse to pretend like you're better than other people. And I think that, that was unfortunately part of how I wanted to look at things. And I'd like to think that I've, changed somewhat since then. But, that arrogance really can accompany, that way of talking and going about yourself.
I completely understand everything you've mentioned with how you dress and that level of arrogance and just, in general, being on a different level than
and
people.
It's a terrible thing.
It's a terrible thing.
It's a terrible thing.
But it exists, and it makes you a very strange person to some people. So you said you've changed from that. And in your senior speech, you mentioned that as a freshman, you came in full to the brim with that arrogance.
Yes.
And so what year would you say has really changed you throughout your 4 years here at SA?
I do think it was a gradual progression. I can't really name I mean, if anything, I would say, sophomore year was when I really started to realize, hey, people might not like this.
Yeah.
It's really off-putting. And of course, as I started to meet more and more people, as I've said, I realized that not only do these people have such amazing things to say and such amazing stories to tell, but they are so much better than me, at a myriad of things.
Mm-hmm.
I really, honestly, just had to get off that high horse because I had no right to be there.
Yes.
And it's been very rewarding. I really just, I love to laugh with people. I love to get along with people. I love to converse with people. And I love it when that conversation goes both ways. I don't really I would try, to hear as much from them as they would hear from me.
That's an important skill to have in life, just in general. I know that a lot of conversations are often one-sided, which is...
It can be that way.
Yes, and it's often unfortunate. However, at the same time, would you say that through your journey from becoming freshman you to senior you, yes,
Mm-hmm.
Was there anything that you lost along the way that you wish you had retained?
That's a good question. Can't really say that I have, to be quite honest with you. I still approach, things with a degree of seriousness when applicable. But on the flip side, I can be, and I'm being very honest with you, the funniest and silliest person, you can see in the room. But it's with very, certain people.
Of course.
That I'd be willing to do so with. So really, I don't think I've lost anything. The very few things that I've lost has just been, like I said, the extreme degree of arrogance and just, the absurd commitment to a kind of person that, nobody would really want to be around.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. You also mentioned London and how, I assume that you loved it there.
Yeah.
As a freshman.
It was really...
I will
contend that I still love it there. I'm very privileged and blessed that I'm able to even go to such a place in my life in the first place. But it's just, it really is an incredible place. It's a beautiful place.
Yes.
I really love, that kind of architecture. It's an area rich with history, obviously.
Of course, yes.
There's a museum around every corner. What's not to love?
Mm-hmm.
From the bakeries to the cafes to just the charm of it all. It's just such a wonderful, rich place to be. And I felt that, back when I was a freshman, and I feel the same way now.
Would you consider, for example, first off, where are you going to college? I assume you are going to college. You seem like the sort of person.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Yes. And do you know where you're going?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No. Decisions will be released. I believe some will be released today.
Oh.
And then in March. But to answer the question now, no. I am not certain as to where I'll be going. I can tell you that I'm not going to stay in the state or on the West Coast. And I really can't tell you why. I just, I was looking for a new area, a new environment. Whether that be in the South or the Midwest or the East Coast, I really don't care. I'm really open to any kind of new destination. I'm not picky when it comes to that.
And what would you be pursuing in life as either a career or simply a goal?
Obviously, that's something that I've given a lot of thought.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to say that I would pursue history, but if I'm being honest with you, there's not a lot of money to be made in that. So perhaps, I really have to go somewhere in a business or financial route. Mm-hmm. And I think that I would have a good time doing something like that. What that is specifically, I couldn't tell you. But, if I were to pursue something just for fun, it would probably be something in the vein of history. Dot recommended that I try, a class in rhetoric, which is an interesting possibility. I had never really considered that, because I really do love to talk. I really do love to converse, have discussions with people. I'm not exactly sure what a college major in rhetoric would really entail.
Yes.
But it is definitely something that I'm looking into.
Possibility. So you've mentioned a lot about talking with people, conversing with people. Have you ever considered teaching as a profession, or simply as perhaps giving lectures every so often?
Well, I mean, obviously I'd have to be teaching about something that
yes.
I know anything about.
Mm-hmm. But you seem knowledgeable, at least in
certain things.
In certain subjects.
In certain things. As far as teaching is a possibility, I don't really think I have it cut out to be a teacher. I'd like to think, like most people, that I have a lot of patience, but in practice, not really.
Yeah.
So, I think that's strike number one as far as being a teacher is concerned. And also just, I don't know, I really would like to I'd like to go out there in a marketplace and do something, create something, or, I don't know, just engage in that business space somehow, or at least try. I feel like that would be, the first step. Honestly, I don't really think I would want to be involved in academia, now that I think about it. I like to read and write and discuss about, things that are important and crucial, in an academic setting, but I wouldn't really want to be, in such a setting permanently.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to engage with, all the things that a teacher would have to do, all the things that a professor would have to abide by and endure, as a figure in an institution.
Yes.
I don't think I would care for that.
So you mentioned your grandfather traveled the world. Would you also consider traveling around the world to learn as he did? I assume that during his travels he learned much about history, architecture, and simply just the stories of the people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that if you were to ask that question to a lot of people, their answer would be, yes, I would love to travel the world to see as much as I can see. Obviously, I think logistically and financially, that would have to be sorted out first before, I would go on any sort of world journey.
Yes.
In a perfect world where those would not be a concern, yes. I would love to go, wherever the wind takes me, to be quite honest with you. I like to, to plan things ahead and to schedule a trip. But I think it would also be an interesting experience to just go somewhere. Mm-hmm. Just go somewhere and see what you can find.
So you mentioned you enjoy planning, and I understand that a lot. Planning gives a structure to the life around us. And however, you also said you would be willing to go, quote, wherever the winds would take you. How would that affect you, do you feel, that if you were to take perhaps a year and just go where the winds would take you, what do you think that might do to you, like in terms of a person and your personality?
I really don't know. I really can't answer that with much certainty. I don't think that much would change, to be quite honest with you. I like to plan things, but there are certain times where leniency does suit me better.
Yes.
So I think I can be quite adaptable to that. I really, despite what I might, portray to people, I really am quite flexible when it comes to a lot of things. I'm really now open to a lot of new experiences and places and people, So I think that would be a thrill, to be quite honest with you.
That's good to hear. Yes, adaptability is something we all need to learn one day. Just some people takes them longer to learn. So what classes are you taking currently?
Currently, that would be robotics, AP Mandarin. Oh, God. Historiography and multivariable calculus. Yeah, whenever someone asks me that question, I always kind of blank out.
On that question, yeah. No, it's very difficult because they just become part of your life and you just never give them a name after that. Are you enjoying them currently?
I would say that I am.
That's good.
I was expecting, second semester senior year to be a lot more relaxed and easy, but with the with college requirements and just again subsequently the classes I chose to take, that ended up not being how things are going right now. But I'm still having an enjoyable time.
That's very good. Do you enjoy? You mentioned before that you don't enjoy sports. Do you, however, enjoy like taking walks, hiking?
Yeah, it's difficult because I love to self-deprecate sometimes, in a humorous way.
Yes.
About I don't like to do sports. I'm not athletic in that way. But to be, I think that I could very much do so if I wanted to, if I tried.
Yes.
I used to do track. I used to play tennis and golf. So I did sports. I just didn't like them.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as that's concerned now, I really do love to walk places, and with the traveling I do, I'm allowed to do so.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I do when I am able to travel somewhere new is I walk to, a museum, but then I also I walk around, again with that sort of aimlessness.
Yes.
Just to see what I can find. And really that's an amazing thing.
And
my parents allow me that kind of leniency to literally just, stop what I'm doing when we're traveling somewhere and just take off.
Mm-hmm.
Just see what I can see, find what I can find. I might have, lunch at a random cafe, or I might look at an art exhibit in the park, or, who knows what. So, I do enjoy to be active in that way. I really do hate to be bottled in somewhere for an extended period of time. I need to be doing something, going somewhere.
So, going somewhere, have you taken an intercession trip yet?
Not yet, but
No.
we're going to Ireland in the spring, and I'm very excited for that.
Yes. I've heard a lot of people express excitement for the Ireland trip. Do you have anything planned for you to do in Ireland?
Well, a lot of people forget that the theme of the Ireland trip is literary Ireland, so we're going to be looking at a lot of famous sites of Irish poets and playwrights, from their homes to their workspaces to, I would assume, certain museums and artifacts that pertain to that. And of course, in the intermittent time we have in between, I'm trying to push the group to see, what's it called? Might be Warwick Castle. There's a castle in the center of Dublin. It's. I went there before.
I believe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know the specific name, but regardless.
There's a castle.
Regardless of the literary stuff, I'm sure we'll be able to see, many other things pertaining to Ireland in general.
Yes,
whether it
just
be
the
a
Irish
castle
culture.
or the museum about the Revolutionary War in Ireland is also a fantastic place that I hope we go to. To just again a regular site like a store or a cafe or a market. I'd be happy to do any of that.
Is there anywhere that of historical importance you have not visited and wish to visit in the future?
Well, you could really argue that anywhere in the world is a place of some historical importance. From an author's house to a king's a castle to the sites of a battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
There are too many of those places to name. I would love to go to Gettysburg,
Yes.
to look at the Civil War, monuments and just the battlefield there. I think that would be fascinating. I would like to go to Germany as well to take a look at, a lot of the artifacts that would be present there from throughout that country's history.
Germany's history. Yes, Europe in general just has a lot to visit in terms of artifacts and history. And America, even with it still being such a young country, there's a lot that we can visit here, and much of it holds an importance to us, simply due to the fact that most of us are American. And even when we are not, we try to assimilate ourselves into the culture so much that we try to visit everywhere that we can and understand the history so that we may become more American, as it were. Have you visited New York?
Yeah,
Yes.
we go there every year for Thanksgiving.
Oh.
So
Do you have family?
We do have family there. All of my mom's side, my great uncle, who is my grandfather's brother, and very much like him, I will contend too. And perhaps not an equal source of inspiration, but definitely someone I look up to. But yeah, every year for Thanksgiving, we go to New York City, and for New York City especially, actually, I really, there is so much to see there. There is so much to see, and whether it be going through Central Park for the 20th time, or perhaps a part of the city yet to be explored, or a Broadway show, which we were very, again, privileged to see this year. There's a lot. There's certainly no shortage of things to do there.
Which Broadway show did you see in New York?
Phantom of the Opera.
Ah.
Oh my God, that was, it's hard because I'm really a sucker when it comes to that sort of thing. I love any sort of, theater or performance. I could never do it myself. I'll say that right now. But I love to watch it, and I love to just, to be witnessed to such incredible talent. And Phantom of the Opera, the music is just...
It's wonderful.
My mom told me the music is haunting, and I'm like, okay, sure. Once we watched it, she wasn't kidding.
Yes.
She wasn't kidding.
Is there a show that you plan to see in the future? Something that has burrowed its way into your brain and makes you want to watch it?
I'd like to see Wicked. I'd also really like to see Fiddler on the Roof.
I've heard a lot about that. What is that about?
Fiddler on the Roof is... It's a story about the Jewish people in Russia before, and I believe it was before the Bolshevik Revolution, but I could be mistaken. But at any rate, it's really a tragic tale about just the struggles of an everyday farmer named Tevye and his family. Him being able to marry off his 3 daughters and their subsequent stories, and in the end, it all culminating in the unfortunate. And I'm trying to remember. I don't remember the specific term, but it was basically a forced removal of the Jewish people in that part of Russia during that time.
Yes.
Where they were, again, just persecuted beyond belief, and then eventually evicted from their homes to be able to go to God knows where.
Just out of there. What other shows have you seen? You've seen Phantom of the Opera. Anything?
Phantom of the Opera. I saw a play called The Front Page. It was obscure. It was with Nathan Lane. And for anybody who knows Nathan Lane, they'll probably know him as Cam's friend on Modern Family. Pepper. Yeah, that's his name. The guy who plays Pepper on Modern Family. So that was really the main attraction to that show. And again, it was a fine production. It's kind of boring, to be quite honest with you, but the acting and just the set pieces were really phenomenal in that one.
Did you watch Spring Awakening here at SA?
I did.
Did you enjoy it?
I watched it twice.
Really? Did you see both casts?
That was the intention. It was. It's hard. Well, it's not hard. Everyone in this school, regardless of what show they do, just does such a phenomenal job.
Yes, we have a very talented.
It's really something. I am really in awe of what my peers are able to do, and just what they're able, the talent that they're able to, put forth on that stage. It's just something that, is incredible to me.
Did you ever attempt to join theater?
I did do theater class freshman year, and I actually did have a lot of fun in that class. It was actually a great way, to meet people And for all the freshmen that took, theater their first year, I will contend that it's, certainly a great leg up as far as, connecting with people and meeting people is concerned. And actually, going back to one of your previous questions, you asked me about a time that I really began to question who I was, who I had brought, to this new place, to this new school. I think in theater class, that was really the beginning of that questioning and that change for me. Just, being forced to take on different roles or, interact with people in sometimes a silly manner or just, a casual manner was new for me. And it was really a time where I began, I think when I first began to change was theater class.
Well, that seems like it's about all the time we have. I need to give you some time to get to class. It was wonderful to speak with you for about half an hour.
Half an hour? Wow.
Yes, that
really
was
fast.
very quick. Do you have anything you would like to say to the listeners or just in general? Right now we still have about 4 minutes before we have to be at class.
Okay. I would just say that I know that discussions about my grandfather or history or traveling might not be entertaining to some people, so I hope I didn't bore you to death. But I would just, I don't know, at the end of the day, I would just emphasize the importance of conversation, of connection, of really, being able to articulate what you believe and what you think, but balancing that with an importance of listening to what others have to say, and perhaps even changing your own perceptions in accordance to that. Now, I really think that at the end of the day, as far as high school is concerned, for me, that has been what's been most influential to me. Listening to people, whether it be their stories or tribulations, is a part of life that no one should ignore. And if I were to say one more thing, while I have very little time left in high school, on the day I come back here, whether it be for a future school show or my sister's graduation, in a long time from now, it'd be interesting to see, the kind of person that you will become in that time, whether or not you'll change as I did or not. I think that'll be fascinating. But either way, it was a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.